Hey everybody, welcome in again. I'm Ethan Evans, and tonight we're going to talk about how to answer hard interview questions. I want to talk a little bit about interviewing successfully. So let's talk about the sport of interviewing. And you'll do better in interviews if you think of it as a sport. And by the way, this goes on both sides of interviewing. So if you're choosing people to be on your team or you're a manager, thinking of it a little bit as a sport you play that you want to get good at will help you. Now, here's the most important thing about it being a sport. When you're interviewing, most of us don't have very much practice. So we don't get we don't get very much practice at this sport, and yet our career depends on it. Because you interview, then you work at a job a couple years, then you interview again, and you work at a job a couple years. So you're not interviewing very often. Meanwhile, the person on the other side of the table might be like me. I've done about 2,500 interviews in my life. In the year where I was doing the most hiring, I did 225 interviews in a single year. So I was doing one interview a day. So this is like that classic movie quote. When you come interview with a team of people that are doing a lot of hiring, they're interviewing every day. You're interviewing once every other year. You're bringing a knife to a gunfight. So you don't want your career to depend on luck, because who interviews best right now? Who interviews best right now is going to be not the person who's got the most skill, because no one practices it a lot, but the people who are best at answering on the fly, being surprised, bouncing left and right, talking off the top of their head. Those are the people that are going to do, they're going to do really well. So, if that's not you, if you're not someone who speaks quickly on the tip of your tongue, you want to practice and think about questions beforehand so that you can go in and be prepared. I have a few points of advice for you. First, for any career, for any resume, you should think through what are the harsh or difficult questions you're going to be asked or could be asked by an interviewer who's kind of a jerk. And you don't want to be caught by surprise and have to stumble over those. So for example, I've been at Amazon almost 15 years. If I was interviewing someone somewhere else, a jerk interviewer could say, well, aren't you kind of an Amazon lifer? Like, how are you going to transition to a different company? Or, hey, you've been working for a huge conglomerate. We're a startup. What do you know about startups? So I can anticipate those questions, and I better be quick and ready to answer why my brain hasn't gone to mush by being at only one company for 15 years, or why whatever. Why I'm able to get into a startup quickly. So you need to prepare in the same way with your own background. So think through the tough questions, be prepared, try not to be caught off balance. And the reason that matters is for some questions, like why didn't you finish college, you can't do what I normally advise when you get a tough question. Normally, if you get a tough question and you need a minute to think, it's okay to say, well, let me think about that. Or, okay, give me a second. But with why didn't you finish college, if you're like, give me a second, that doesn't make any sense. And people are like, is he concocting a lie? Like, what's going on here? So for a question like that, you need to know what you want to say about why you didn't finish college. Now, I see here in chat, somebody has asked, how long is too long to wait? How long is too long to wait if you ask for some time? It depends on how unusual the question is. I've had some people interview with me take 30 seconds, maybe a minute. Beyond that, it gets weird. Nobody likes silence. They don't do well with silence. So, you've got to fill that space with something. You can ask a clarification. if it makes sense. So to give you an example of a question where you could do this, another question people often want to know how to answer is, if I were to call your current boss and ask him what he was going to say about you, what would he say? It's okay to say, well, let me think about that, what he would relay, and then take a minute to compose yourself. It is not okay on why didn't you finish college. Couple other things. I'm going to recommend you always be honest. You obviously could say all kinds of things about why you didn't finish college, for example, and maybe no one would know the difference, right? My mother got terminal, whatever, nose cancer. You could use whatever you wanted and people wouldn't necessarily know, but I don't recommend that. What I do recommend is that you don't have to go into graphic detail. So, for example, let's take a bad situation, one that's common here. When I went to college, I had been in a very strict household and I found myself with a lot of freedom. I'd always loved video games and my screen time had been regulated. And so I found myself playing a lot of games and I got into bad grades and was expelled for low grades. Could be the complete truth. You don't have to go into all of that, though. You can simply say, hey, when I went to college, I wasn't as mature as I am today, and I didn't manage my time well. And as a result, I needed to get a job instead. So I left college early to get my life on track. Still true, direct, but not just stabbing yourself and making yourself look bad. So there's a difference between being honest and answering the question and looking bad for no reason. So let me talk for a second then. Finally, the goal when answering any of these questions, very few of them are going to make you look like a hero or get you a job. They're usually jerk questions. Even if the person's not intending to be a jerk, these are questions where what you're trying to do is answer them and move on. So, for a question like, why didn't you finish college? You want to have a soundbite tweet kind of answer, not a War and Peace essay where you just go on and on with your life story of why college didn't work out for you. Because basically, why didn't you finish college is a bad question. It's got a bad implication. The implication is, what the hell's wrong with you that you didn't get this done? Whether that's fair or not, we're not discussing here. Interviews aren't about fairness. So, as Hephaestus says, they're mainly questions to disqualify candidates. So you want to answer them and move on. So whatever answer you choose for why didn't you finish college, you want to answer it and move on. So, unsurprisingly, this is a common question. And there are plenty of people with good jobs who didn't finish college. How you answer this depends on your truth as to why. Could be college wasn't a fit for you. Could be your family or you ran out of money. Could be you decided you wanted to change majors, that you had a different job offer, that you found college boring. Doesn't matter why. It matters how you explain that you were in charge of your life or what you've done to put your life on track. So, I didn't finish college because reason. Here's what I did after, or here's what I'm doing now. Here's how my life is on track. And Hephaestus says, is there a way to turn this to your favor? You have to have done something, right? If your honest answer is I didn't finish college because I am unmotivated to work, and then you stare at the interviewer, you are in trouble. You're going to have a better answer than that. But presumably, there are lots of people who didn't finish college but still have skills and motivation. So with almost every hard question, the basic recipe is acknowledge the problem and then pivot to answering or talking about why everything is great now or how you've handled it. So I can't answer this from my own experience because I did finish college, but for example, I left my PhD program. So I can say, if someone says, why didn't you finish your PhD? I can honestly say, well, in my PhD program, I was in the robotics program. I looked around at my peers, and my office mate was in the 8th year of his doctorate. Meanwhile, the best roboticists in the world were able to produce Roomba. And I realized for me, I wanted to have more impact faster than working 6 to 8 years on a doctorate where the best practical application possible in the 90s was something like Roomba. So I switched industries, went into high speed networking, and started developing things that could be used today. That answer's a little long, but you'll notice I owned that I left, and then I turned it into what I was doing instead. That's the basic recipe you want with something like this.